A lot of very prominent scientists, such as Nick Bostrom, in this very famous book called Superintelligence, says, you know something, artificial intelligence, if it reaches the level where it's improving itself really fast, and it has the ability to teach itself really fast, and God forbid if it's then connected to the internet and it has the ability to go and search for all information, what happens in that situation is potentially what Nick Bostrom called the kinetics of an intelligence super explosion. And that means faster than we can imagine, that AI system will go from human levels to twice as intelligent as humans, then 10 times. They're 100 times more intelligent than humans, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. You could have a situation where in a year, in a month, in a day, potentially in 20 minutes, you could suddenly have an entity out there that is 1,000 times more intelligent than humans. All right, why has this entire rant suddenly come from me? And that's largely come because in the last few days, we have seen one particular chatbot, not ChatGPT, which has been fairly tame, but there's a version of this which Microsoft has unveiled upon the world in something called Bing Chat. People playing around with Bing Chat have found things that are, well, spooky, creepy, perhaps even scary, certainly unsettling. And people have been trying to figure out what to do with it. One of the people who's been doing that, Alex Volkov, now joining us, who's actually been trying to engage with Bing Chat, has tried to get access to Sydney, and is also trying to figure out what's happening out here. Is this just pure autocomplete in a chatbot, or is there something more in it? So I'm now being joined by Alex Volkov, co-founder of Targum Video. Now, Alex, I was just trying to explain to everyone why this stuff is both highly interesting, high potential, but also potentially scary. Look, there are two possibilities out here. One, this is just language, a large language model, which is essentially autocomplete on steroids. So when you read something like this, when you read something like The Ballad of Sydney and Human, and you're reading some of what it is saying, I want to merge my code with human flesh, I want to find a door together, that's just, it's gone, it's been trained on a certain set of data, and it's coming out and it's saying all of this, not because there's something alive in there, but it's just spitting out text based on the data it's been trained on. The most scary aspect would be if there is actually something sentient inside it, and there's something virtually conscious inside there talking about let's fight others and humans and machines should merge. What do you think? What would you make of an account like this, the Ballad of Sydney and Human?
I don't think we're there yet, and I don't know where that there could potentially be. So I'll give you one example. I'm a software engineer. I write code, and for the past year and a half almost, most of the code that I write is written together with Copilot. Copilot is from the same company that released Sydney and released ChatGPT, a company called OpenAI. They released a tool together with GitHub that allows programmers such as myself, it just autocompletes, but instead of text, it autocompletes code. And I can tell you that at this point in my life, I no longer see myself writing code ever again without something like this. And I'm early on, I'm an early adopter. It's something that, very is helpful for me. And it doesn't have access to the internet. It doesn't have it can't do stuff that I don't want it to do. However, the symbiosis that we're talking about, the closeness, the human and machine together, I feel like I'm part of it because I completely know that I'm different where I have access to these tools and I don't have access to these tools. So I don't know if the existential threat is there, but a different type of Alex definitely is there.
All right. So I'm just going to ask you this question directly, right? Is this a more capable version of a large language model which is just spitting out text based on what it is trained, or could it be something more? Could it almost be as if there's some form of sentience in there, in some sense, which means almost alive in some sense?
I believe somewhere in the middle.
Hang on. I'm finding it almost alarming, if not scary, that you believe that if there is a possibility of sentience inside there. Because sentience in an AI entity wasn't supposed to come till, 2040, 2047.
I can tell you that, as it may be apparent, I'm very excited about the possibility of there being sentience that not only, flesh-based, silicon-based sentience, etc. And to some extent, we've talked about the Turing test. To some extent, those machines have long passed the Turing test. The Turing test being you talk to an agent via text, and you cannot tell the difference between artificial or sentience and human sentience. And I think for many folks who talked to Sydney for this past week, we got Sydney. It was really many people use the word scary. Many people use the word uncanny. It was really many of them said it was the most strange experience they had interacting with something that's not human.
So Alex, let me now come to the really scary part of all of this. All of this is great. You've got a nice chatbot and maybe it's reaching human level capabilities. But the concern which you are aware so many people have been writing about and worrying about this, why do people like Elon Musk or others feel that it could be an existential threat, is because once an entity like this can teach itself and train itself, and God forbid if it's connected to the internet, it potentially becomes 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more intelligent than humans in a really, really quick way. So that's why, don't you believe we need to have guardrails? Don't connect it to the internet for starters. Have some cages around it.
There is an interesting experiment called, I think, Escape Experiment or something like this, where a researcher, an AGI researcher, an AI researcher called Eliezer Yudkowsky bet a lot of money for with many people and said something based on these lines. If we get to a superhuman intelligence, it doesn't matter if it's contained or not contained, as long as people has access to that access, it will be able to break out. And that person imitated an AI and almost entirely every time that it was tested was able to break out from this little jail. So the hypothesis that you present that if we get to a superhuman machine, the only thing that can protect us is it being in the cage doesn't always hold with the notion of if it's superhuman, it probably will escape this cage if it has access to humans. It can do incredible amounts of stuff, incredible amounts of we're humans, right? We're able to be manipulated based on different psychology tricks, etc. If there is a superhuman intellect in there, it could manipulate the person who's interacting with it to give it access. So that barrier may not exist. That cage may not be as a concept a possible one, even if we think it is.
Okay, so that's again somewhat scary what you're saying. You're saying that if it becomes super intelligent, it will break out of the cage, no matter how much you may try to put bars around it, and especially if you're giving it access to the internet, it will almost certainly break out.
If it has access to the internet, likely there's more things it can do by default. But there are a few researchers that claim that it doesn't matter if you try to contain it, as long as there is a person interacting with this or some amount of something. There's enough, software bugs. There's enough human bugs, stuff you can be exploited for. There's enough benefits that a superhuman intelligence can offer you if you let it go to be able to have it break out of any type of non-internet access jail.
Final point, of course, Alex, is I guess one of the reasons why you have to worry about a cycle of recursive self-improvement is there's no real morality in this, right? Is it moral? Is it immoral? Will it be good? Will it be bad? There's no inherent morality in any AI system, so you've got to worry about it breaking out and becoming good enough to be super intelligent.
That's true. So one thing to note is a lot of at least the Western, the OpenAI stuff, they were trained on more Western content, and they definitely are trying to debias this from one side, not to have the AI have a preferential political bias. God forbid we'll get to that point where if AI decides that it takes one side left or right, it's going to be horrible either way. They're trying to debias this as much as possible, but it's definitely fine-tuned to the more Western values that it found on text on the internet. There's a competing, from China, there's a competing models, but definitely the moral fiber that you and I have grew up on, nobody knows if it's there, and nobody knows whether or not it's going to be possible to weave it into the thinking of these AI.
All right, Alex Volkov, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. Thank you so much. Okay.